Good morning. Today we are continuing to write equations for a line of best fit, meaning we have a scatter plot, a bunch of points, and we need to write an equation that fits that line. So we want an equation in the form y equals mx plus b. So the steps that we take, review from 5.6 b, that last lesson that we did. First we have to pick 2 points. PTS is short for points. On the line, on our diagonal line here, and there happens to be 2 points on our line already. This one is not a good point because we'd have to be like 1.5 to get there, so I would not use that one. But this point is at a nice whole number, 1, 1. And if we follow our line down here, this is a nice point as well, which is, remember, x comes first and then y. X is -1. And y, we're going down -1, -2, -3, -4. Don't use any of these other points because they're not even on the line. We don't care about these other points. So once we have our 2 points, we can find the slope, or count rise over run. So slope is our letter M. So we're going to count rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and run 1, 2. So that's our slope. Now we can't just write an equation right in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. We need to start with point-slope form because we have a point, one of these points, and a slope. So we need to decide which point we want to use. It doesn't matter. I'm going to pick the point 1, 1 because they're both the same number. It's less likely for you to make a mistake. So this is x and y. So we're going to start with our equation, our point-slope form, y minus y1 equals m, x minus x1, and plug in what we know. Well, we have the letter y minus y1, which is 1, equal to our slope, which is 5 over 2, and then x minus x1, which is 1. Now I simply need to solve these. First, getting rid of my parentheses, I need to draw a box to multiply or distribute. We have 5 over 2, and then x minus 1. So if I multiply 5 over 2 times x, it stays the same. It's still 5 over 2x. 5 over 2 times -1, I know it's going to be a negative. 5 over 2 times -1 is still 1 over 1. -5 over 2, it's just negative. So if I was to plug that in my calculator, 5 divided by 2, well, 2 goes into 5 2 times, and there'd be 1 left over at 1/2, or 0.5. So if I were you, if you get a fraction for this second number, always convert it to a decimal. So we have y minus 1 equals 5 over 2x minus 2.5. But we want y by itself, so the opposite of subtracting 1 right here is adding 1. So we're left with y equals 5 over 2x. And if we have -2.5 and a positive 1, there's more negatives. 2.5 minus 1 is 1.5. So think, here's my equation. Does this make sense? What did we cross at -1.5? -1.5? Yeah, that's where we would begin on our y-axis. But that's not the end. This is what we did the other day. Now it says use your equation to find y when x is 3. We can't follow 3 up to our line because it doesn't fit on our graph. It's not there. So now instead we just need to take 3 and plug it in for x. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite my equation, 5 over 2, but x is now a 3, and then minus 1.5. So we can simply plug this in our calculator. This is multiplication. So in my calculator, first I'm going to plug in 5 divided by 2 in parentheses, 5 divided by 2, and then times 3. And then I need to subtract 1.5. And I get 6. So y equals 6. Think, is your answer reasonable? Does it make sense? If I was to follow 3 up would I cross at about 6? 3, 4, 5, 6. That would make sense. Somewhere up there. Yes. So yes, it does make sense. Let's take a look at our next question. Same thing, write the equation of the line of the best fitting line. So first we're going to start with our point slope form. In order to use this form, we need a slope, so we need to find 2 points on our line. Down here, this is a nice point because we can count to it using whole numbers, like x is 1, 2, and y is down -1, -2, -3. This point is not going to be a good point because it's like 1 or like a half and then like down. It's just not a whole number you can count to. Same with this one, not a good whole number that you can count to. Same, not a good number. So look along here. I would find another point. These ones aren't even on the line. Ignore those ones. I would find another point, if you can, on the line, which may be way up here. That might be a good point to pick. It crosses at a nice whole number you can count to, like -1, -2, -3, -4. And then we're up 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to find my slope between these 2 points, rise over run. If you want to go down and right or up and left, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go up and down first. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. And we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's my slope. And now I need to decide which point do I want to use. It doesn't matter. I'm going to just use this one because they're smaller numbers. So I'm going to use the point 2, -3 for my x1 and my y1. So let's plug this information into our equation. Alright, so we have, try that again, there we go, that's better. Y minus y1, which is -3. Those two negatives make a positive. Then m is -7 over 6. And in parentheses, I have x minus x1, which is 2. So, next step, distribute, draw your box, you can multiply. So we have -7 over 6, and then x minus 2. Multiplying these, -7 over 6 times x, same thing, -7 over 6x. Then our second box, a negative times a negative, I know makes a positive. 7 over 6 times 2, well 2 is 2 over 1. So 7 times 2 on the top is 14. 6 times 1 on the bottom is 6. I don't like 14 over 6 like this, so let's plug that in our calculator. 14 divided by 6 gives me about 2.3 repeating. I'm just going to put 2.3. So that goes in there. So far we have y plus 3, and then -7/6x plus 2.3. And then we finally need to get y by itself, so just subtract 3, the opposite of add 3. We have y equals -7 over 6x. Now think, are there more positives or negatives? There's more negatives. 3 is a bigger negative number. So 3 minus 2.3, if you're not sure, you can plug it in your calculator, just like it is. 2.3 minus 3 give me -0.7, because a 0.7 and a 0.3 would get you to a total of 3. So this is my answer, and it makes sense because we would cross at a -0.7, somewhere around there. You can see that we would be crossing the y-axis at about 0.7. But we do need to do our last step, which is to find the value of y when x is 3. So we're going to plug a 3 into our equation. Now you can look at your graph here and get a close guess, but it's not going to be an exact answer. So if you have an equation already, use your equation. So we're going to plug in a 3 there. So we're going to write y equals -7 over 6 times 3 minus 0.7. So we have, in parentheses, -7 divided by 6 times 3. And then we need to subtract 0.7, which is negative 4.2. Well, does that make sense? Here's negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Based on what we said here, if we follow 3 down, yeah, I'm a little bit more than 4, maybe 4.2. So yes, my answer is reasonable. It makes sense. All right, flip over to the back side when you're ready here. We have another problem, but we need to actually plot the points ourselves this time. So it says make a scatter plot, describe the correlation, draw a line of best fit, and approximate. It doesn't say anything about writing an equation, so you don't need to write an equation for this one. So let's start by number 1, making a scatter plot. So here's x and here's y. Be careful, these go by 2's, and this way goes by 1's. So x is negative 1, and y is 3. So negative 1 is in the middle, and then up to 3. Then 0, up 3. X is 0. We're not going left and right, just straight up 3. Those are right next to each other. Then at 1, we're up 1. So at 1, up 1. It looks funny, but 1 would be in the middle there. Then at 2, 1, 2, we're at 0. Let me erase this little point there. And then our last one at 4, we're at negative 3. 4, we're down 1, 2, 3. So even though it doesn't look like it, these do form a nice kind of line here. You can see just looking at the red dots, they form a nice line. So in order to describe the correlation, it might help you to circle them. That wasn't a very good circle. But if I were to draw a line through here, cut the equation or cut the circle in half. Ooh, that was not very good. Let me try that again. Use the edge of a piece of paper or something to try and make it go right through the middle of those points. So our correlation, what type of correlation is this? Well, from left to right, we're going or walking downhill. So this would be a negative correlation. So we did number 1, we made a scatter plot. We did number 2, we described the correlation. It's negative. Number 3, we drew a line of best fit. And then last part 4 here, approximate the value of y when x is 8. So approximate again means guess. We're not plugging it into an equation. We're just going to get close to what y is when x is 8. So here these go by 2's, 2, 4, 6, 8. So 8's right in the edge of my graph. And now we all drew our lines a little bit differently. So if I follow 8 down, I'm not going to be able to do a very good estimate, which is why an equation would be better. However, we don't have an equation. So we're going to do our best guessing. So if you need to extend your lines out, do that. So this would be like negative 4, maybe like negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. So when I follow 8 down, I'm going to cross about here, which to me is at a negative 6. Maybe for you it's at negative 7. Maybe it's at 6.5. You need to pick or decide where is it exactly on your graph. Take a close guess. All right, last question. It says the table shows the monthly profit of a small company. So here's our months, January, February, March, April, May. It says make a scatter plot of the data. X represents the number of months, which you can see here, X is months since January, and Y represents the profit in dollars on this side. So in January, they had $1,200 in profit, or money that they gained. So if it's January, how many months has it been since January? Well, it hasn't been any months. That would be 0. This is month 0. We're up to 1,200. That means February is 1 month since January, so at 1 we're at 1,250, which is in the middle. These go by hundreds, so 1,250 would be between 1,200 and 1,300. Then month 2 would be at 1,400. Then month 3 would be at 1,380, so a little bit less than 1,400. And May is 1,450. in between those two. There we already did part A. We made a scatter plot. And now it says approximate the profit in July. Well, if this is months since January, it says January, February, March, April, May, June is there, so July is 1 off the graph. So this would be month 5, so really month 6, which if you want to draw a line out here, you can. Oop, this would be month 6. So I need a line of best fit, so I would probably circle my points and draw a line through it so I have a place to follow 6 up to. So at month 6, if I follow this straight up, these lines cross right here, which on my graph happens to be about 1600. These go by 100s. 1200, 1300, 1400, 1500, 1600. So mine is about, this little means about 1600. Maybe yours was a little bit less. Maybe it was 1590. But get close to what your graph was at. Alright, you do have a homework assignment. Do your best. If you have questions, let me know. The back is just like the back side of our notes today. You will have a quiz